hearing inside the committee? Do they have the votes? Do they have a form that can pass?
Well, Bill, we're expecting some meaningful changes to this House Republican tax reform plan, but have not seen them yet. The Ways and Means Committee was scheduled to go into its fourth day of markup when lawmakers debate and offer amendments to the tax reform package. That's been on hold. We expect they've been going over the changes to the bill. The plan has been having Ways and Means vote on it today, with the House overall voting on the package next week. One controversial issue is whether folks from high-tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California would be worse off with a big reduction in those state and local tax deductions. The majority leader in the House from the state of California says that is not the case.
If you look at the overall tax bill, if you eliminate the AMT, you lower the rates, you move up the standard deduction, what happens is you will pay less tax when you do your entire tax reform. And so that's what happens.
McCarthy making that argument, but a lot of New York and New Jersey Republicans are not sold so far, Bill.
Neither in California, a few other places as well. The rollout today in the Senate, will it happen?
We're expecting that later today. The idea is going after the Ways and Means Committee acts. Senator Orrin Hatch is expected to roll out the Finance Committee version in the Senate. Their plan on tax reform, it's expected to be significantly different than the House plan. For example, it's expected to get rid altogether of the state and local tax deduction. A Senate moderate sounds cautiously optimistic.
We do need to provide tax relief to hardworking middle-income families, to our small businesses, and this bill appears to accomplish some of those goals.
Top Democrats say they will push to make sure tax reform helps the little guy.
Here's what we say. Put your corporate tax handout where your mouth is. And we're going to make sure that the American people, the middle class, are the ones that get the tax relief.
Soon we will have members of both parties arguing over two different tax reform plans.
Well, away we go. Mike Emanuel, thanks from the Hill. Sandra.
All right, joining us now for a closer look at the tax cut plans. Art Laffer served as an economic advisor to President Reagan. You were in some way are involved in the crafting of the Senate plan that we're about to see for the first time in a few minutes.
Well, I was consulted on that, but I don't think I really did any crafting of that whatsoever. But I was consulted by several.
But you have an opinion on it. Do you like what we're about to see from the Senate?
Well, if they get rid of the state and local tax deductions, I would like that very much. If they phase in the corporate tax cut, I think that's a killer. I think that will do. That's just the mistake we made in '81, and we caused the Great Recession of '81, '82 by phasing in the personal income tax cuts. And I think they cannot do any phase-in on the corporate tax rate reduction. That would be really bad.
I heard you say on the Fox Business Network the House bill is much less pro-growth. What specifically do you take issue with in the House bill?
Well, the House bill, I mean, not the 46% interim tax there, increasing deductions, doubling deductions, child care, all of those are anti-growth. The whole purpose of this, Sandra, is dynamic. I hear Wyden talk there. I hear other people talk always about will it help this group or that group. Every group should be helped by economic growth. And I think Marco Rubio's clip that you just had was excellent, right on point. I want everyone to pay more taxes because those people who don't have jobs all of a sudden get jobs and have income and pay taxes. Yep. Those who have jobs and will get much higher incomes and therefore pay more in taxes. All the corporations will as well because they use less deductions, less tax sheltering, less tax evasion. And they'll pay more in taxes. So this is a growth bill that will yield lots and lots of revenues over the next 10 years. And it's the way of saving the budget, creating prosperity, and bringing jobs back to America, which is wonderful. Well, we all want
that, Art, but we are wondering if there's going to be big differences in these two plans. That we know what Democrats think about the details in the House bill. Listen to top Democrats Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi here.
We say to our Republican friends on this tax bill, as Clint Eastwood said, you want to pass this tax bill? You want to hurt the suburbs? Make our day. Make our day.
He and I both view what is happening in these rooms not as tax reform, not as tax cuts, but a tax scam.
So then we hear, according to the Wall Street Journal this morning, that President Trump, when he called in for that conversation with Senate Democrats, he said, you're going to like this bill a whole lot better, or this plan a whole lot better than one we're about to see from the Senate. So are the House and Senate really far apart?
I don't really know. I don't know where President Trump gets that idea, but maybe he's right. But to me, this is all dynamics, and with this Make My Day. Clint Eastwood was part of our team, by the way, back in the 80s. You know, the Democrats did really well in 1982. In the off elections, they picked up seats in the House and the Senate. But by 1984, once that tax bill hit, and we had this spectacular period of economic growth, it was a really close election in November of 1984. We only won 49 out of 50 states. We swept them. From then on, it was great. In the 86 Tax Act, Sandra, 97-3 was the passage of that bill. Democrats voted with us. All of them voted with us, not all.
So let me use this opportunity to tell you that we are about to hear from House Speaker Paul Ryan. He's joining us this hour. And he is saying, and you're going to hear him say this, that what they are putting forward is bigger than those Reagan 86 tax cuts. Obviously, you can chime in and have an opinion on that. Do you see it that way?
Let me just tell you what we did and see if you see it that way. We cut the corporate rate from 46 to 34%. We cut the highest personal income tax rate from 50% to 28%. We went from 14 tax brackets to 2 tax brackets. Now, we got rid of all these deductions, exemptions, and exclusions that were all anti-growth. Now, you tell me if there's anything even close to this anywhere in this world. That was the tax bill of the century.
I think I'm picking up what you're laying down there. Art Laffer.
Thank you very much, Sandra.
It's always good to get your perspective, sir. Thank you.
That, by the way, picking up what you're laying down is a Connie Francis phrase, if you'll remember. It's a great line.
Did I say he offers perspective? Bill Hemmer. All right, Art Laffer, we really appreciate you coming on this morning.
Great bit there. Thank you. Nice to see you. Meanwhile, on the House side, the House Speaker Paul Ryan says the goal is to take care of the middle class.
The analysis shows us that the average taxpayer in all income levels gets a tax cut. I'm sure there's going to be some wealthy person out there who has a lawyer and accountant that has been able to utilize every different loophole and deduction that is out there, because as you know, the tax loopholes that are in the code are disproportionately used by the very wealthy folks in this country. And when you remove those loopholes in order to lower tax rates across the board, in order to provide simplicity and fairness, the people at the high end lose those loopholes.
Okay, Senator, that's his pitch. He had a lot more to say about that, too. So the rest of our interview coming up at the bottom of the hour here, and you can decide for yourself whether or not it's good.
Art Laffer's having way too much fun.
Yeah, right? Now, you tell me whether it's better or not. Thanks, Art.
It's a big day.
Another big story today now. Investigators searching for answers after that horrific church shooting. The Vice President, Mike Pence, visiting with the victims' families and survivors from that massacre yesterday, and offering words of comfort and words of faith.
Seems like too often we hear of another tragedy, another senseless act of violence against the innocent. In these times, I expect it's easy for some to lose heart. But as the good people of Sutherland Springs have taught the nation this week, faith is the antidote to fear and despair.
Casey Stiegel picks up from there, Sutherland Springs, Texas this morning. And Casey, hello.
Bill, good morning. Yeah, we now know the names, in fact, of all 26 people who lost their lives here at the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs. We want to show you their pictures and tell you a little bit about some of them. They range in age from an unborn baby to a 77-year-old man. There were multiple members from one family, a retired member of the Air Force, a teen who wanted to be a nurse, and then, of course, we know the pastor's daughter. Among the victims were 8 children, including a baby and that unborn child. This is the largest mass shooting involving children since Sandy Hook back in 2012. And back out here live on the side of the road, last night a carpenter from Illinois came, volunteered his time, and erected these crosses just outside of the church. There is one here for each of the 26 victims. Awfully powerful. As you heard, Vice President Mike Pence traveled to Sutherland Springs yesterday and attended a vigil for the victims nearby. Family members and survivors were also there, where he tried to offer them some comfort for such a senseless crime.
Families of these and all the fallen, we extend the deepest sympathies of the first family, our little family, and all the American people. The Bible tells us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. And that will be our prayer for you from this day forward.
The Vice President also says he is looking into, as well as the Air Force looking into, how this man would have been able to purchase guns since he was kicked out of the military, and he vows to work with Congress to do that. Meantime, the members of this church, the survivors, say they are not wasting any time to try and get back to normal. They will be holding a church service here this coming Sunday.
Wow.
Wow.
That's something
Bill.
else. Casey Stiegel, thank you for your coverage down there.
Meanwhile, as we remember those church victims, FBI officials are working to unlock the suspect's encrypted cell phone to find out what clues could be inside. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mike McCall. We will get his reaction to this ongoing issue for law enforcement.
Also, the Democratic Party celebrating after Tuesday night's big wins in Virginia and New Jersey. Is that celebration premature? Our panel takes that up on the implications for the 2018 midterms. Coming up here.
I do think that the Democratic Party in this election was more energized, looks to me like, than the Republican voter. Why that is, I don't know.
It's an important moment here on the Hill now. The first responders who responded to the shooting of Steve Scalise and others in Alexandria, Virginia during that baseball warm-up game, the practice at 7 o'clock in the morning, now being honored on the Hill. So just wanted to share that with you and give them their just due, and to say yet again to them and everyone across the country, as first responders, thank you for the work you do every single day.
The FBI working to unlock the Texas church gunman's phone while searching for answers to Sunday's massacre. Yesterday, the FBI made it clear that the issue is part of an ongoing larger problem for law enforcement when it comes to these types of investigations. Texas Congressman Mike McCall is chairman of the House Committee on Homeland Security and joins me now. Chairman, thank you for being here this morning. This is hard for us to understand. Here, this phone. We have the phone, they have it, of the suspect, and they can't get into it. Obviously, that could reveal so much about this person. Why can't we get into the phone?
Same problem we had in the San Bernardino case, the terrorists. We had the phone, and the FBI wanted the evidence, but we were not able to open that phone, and Apple claimed that they couldn't open it because they made it so secure. The result in that case was hiring an Israeli defense contractor to get into the phone. And it also raises a larger question of encryption, where the terrorists or criminals can use encrypted apps like the Paris attackers, Belgium, use Telegram to communicate, and we can't see those communications in advance. And as a former federal prosecutor, if you can't see what they're saying in advance, even if you have a wiretap or FISA, then you can't stop that act from occurring.
And we know that there is going to be investigations as to how the Air Force dropped the ball here and why that information was not communicated, because we know at this point, had it been communicated, what had happened while he was in the Air Force, domestic abuse of his wife and his stepchild, that he would not have been able to purchase those guns. What needs to happen? What change do we need to see, Chairman?
Well, and it happened in my home state. My thoughts and prayers go out to the families. The tragedy is not only that 26 people were killed, but that this could have been stopped. I think under federal law, if you're convicted of a felony or domestic violence crime, which was the case here, it needs to be reported in the criminal database. It's called NCIC. And that's when people purchase firearms, they run the checks through that database. Unfortunately, it looks like the Air Force did not share that information and put it into the database. I do commend the Air Force for starting this investigation. but it may just be the tip of the iceberg as to how many other offenses are out there that are not in the database that could prevent this kind of tragedy from happening again.
The House Armed Services Chairman Mac Thornberry, Republican from the state of Texas, issued this statement saying that news that the Air Force failed to notify the FBI of Devin Kelly's military criminal record is appalling. I understand that Secretary Wilson has initiated an investigation, but I don't believe that the Air Force should be left to self-police after such tragic consequences. Furthermore, I am concerned that the failure to properly report domestic violence convictions may be a systemic issue. Chairman, we just had a reporter on the ground there in that small town showing us the crosses for those 26 people who died that day. And you just wonder, will anyone be held accountable for this as far as at the Air Force level for dropping the ball and communicating that information?
Well, I can tell you, as a chairman, and Chairman Thornberry, I know, will be holding hearings on this very issue to get to the bottom of what happened so we can stop this. That's a great tragedy. Is not only do we have 26 people murdered and children killed, but the fact that it could have possibly been stopped, it makes it even more hard to accept. And so I can assure you that Congress will be holding oversight hearings on this.
Chairman, I want to get your thoughts before we let you go on the president's trip overseas. We don't know yet whether or not he will be meeting with Vladimir Putin. That is being discussed, as we are told from the State Department at this point. How do you think it's going over there?
I think it's going very well. I tell you, I think this president is at his best when he is overseas meeting with world leaders. He's had very successful visits with the Prime Minister of Japan, the President of South Korea, to put leverage, in terms of they're our allies. And the previous administration didn't always treat our allies very well. And if we can help arm them with missile defense systems, that puts pressure on China in turn to deal with the North Korean threat. And I think that's the overall strategy that the president's trying to do, in addition to the 3 aircraft carriers, off the coast of the peninsula of Korea. That all put together should help in leveraging a denuclearized North Korea.
Chairman, we've got to leave it there. 2 seconds. Should he or should he not? Would you recommend meeting with Vladimir Putin?
Oh gosh, that's. I would. I think communication is always valuable, and I think it's Russia is a foreign adversary. But I do think he should sit down and talk to him.
Chairman McCall, thank you for coming on with us. Good to see you.
Well,
thanks,
more in a moment here on a busy hour here at the Manor Commission to the anti-Trump dossier. We'll talk with investigators after all. In a moment, why the change of hearts? Coming up. Fusion GPS will answer questions from the House Intelligence Committee. That's the firm that commissioned the anti-Trump dossier. Glenn Simpson's attorney says the committee is being more flexible. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge live on that out of D.C. And Catherine, good morning. What can we expect from Glenn Simpson's testimony?
Well, Bill, good morning. The deal means Simpson will answer questions behind closed doors, and he maintains the right to take the Fifth. That's what his lawyer is referring to at this news conference.
Mr. Simpson will be appearing voluntarily. He will tell the truth. The subpoena will be withdrawn, and he will be able to maintain Fusion GPS's privileges and honor its legal obligations. And we're very appreciative of the fact that reason has ruled the day, and we can move forward.
This is the only image we got of Simpson yesterday as he avoided reporters on Capitol Hill. Senate Judiciary Committee investigators interviewed Simpson for more than 10 hours on August 22nd with similar ground rules. A source familiar with those proceedings told Fox News the session was punctuated by stalling tactics and delays by Simpson and his legal team. They also provided thousands of blank pages or media reports in response to the Senate committee's request for records bill.
So there are new revelations about a suspicious meeting with a Russian lawyer. What is that all about?
Well, Bill, Fox News has learned that Simpson was with the Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya over a 72-hour period before and after the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting where she met with the president's son. At that time, Fox News has confirmed that bank records show Fusion GPS was paid by a law firm for work on behalf of a Kremlin-linked oligarch, while at the same time Fusion paid a former British spy to dig up dirt on Trump through Russian sources. Simpson's contact with the lawyer both reportedly worked to overturn U.S. sanctions against Moscow at the height of the 2016 election. Together with revelations, the dossier research was funded by the DNC and Clinton campaign, raised more questions about the company's role in the 2016 election.
What we're finding out is that there is a lot of Russian influence in Washington and a lot of Russian money flowing in to influence our political process in Washington.
Though the legal teams addressed reporters on Capitol Hill yesterday, they did not answer Fox's questions about these specific issues, Bill.
Wow, this will be interesting.
It will.
Thank you, Catherine Herridge.
You're welcome.
You bet, from Washington, D.C.
Well, this is a Fox News alert. The neighbor accused of assaulting Senator Rand Paul at his home, he has pled not guilty. He was in court this morning. 59-year-old Rene Boucher was released on bail Saturday and so far faces only a misdemeanor charge. But that just in, Senator Rand Paul suffered 6, and he did make it clear it was 6, not 5, 6 fractured ribs. But that neighbor pleading not guilty to those misdemeanor charges. So we are learning more on this as it comes in.
Not guilty. This after the attorney for the neighbor has been so apologetic publicly, right?
They were.
Couple of different
they
statements.
sent their best wishes to Rand Paul. Rand Paul, by the way, has said, indicated he'll be back to work next week. But all of this after playing out in his Bowling Green
It's got to be
community.
I mean, imagine the pain. Was it a riding mower or was he pushing a mower? I mean, what?
And what caused the fight to begin with?
Yeah, well, neighbors. You know what they say about neighbors.
17 years they've been neighbors.
Build better fences. Tax reform, a big topic on the Hill. Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, in moments on the new headwinds Republicans face from Democrats and possibly from their own party. That's coming up next.
The door is certainly open for us. In 2005, right now, we had President Bush down to 38%. That's approximately where President Trump is now. That opens the door.
It is certainly a big day now on the tax issue. We're awaiting major movement in both the House and the Senate. These are committee hearings right now. Ultimately, can a Republican majority pass a bill? And what will satisfy the president? A bit earlier, I spoke to the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, about all that and a lot more. Mr. Speaker, good morning. Welcome back
morning. How you doing, Bill?
America's Newsroom. I'm terrific. I don't envy you. You know, they said tax reform was more difficult than health care reform, and we're about to see why. First, the easy stuff. The Senate has its own bill. We expect to see it today. How different will it be from the House version?
It's going to stick within the same framework that we agreed to. That was the agreement all along. As you know, Bill, we negotiated, we being the House, with the Senate and the President all summer, early fall, to produce a bill that works inside the framework, and both the House and the Senate bill will do that.
Okay, well, I'm seeing something else. Senate set for clash with the House on the tax bill. That's from thehill.com.
I think the media loves to play up this drama. Of course they're going to have different policies inside this framework. That's how legislation works, just so you know. We write a bill, they write a bill, we pass a bill, they pass a bill, we go to a conference committee, iron out the differences. That's how laws are written all the time. This will be no different. This is going through the regular process.
The way you talk, it makes it sound simple. And I think you long for the days of John Boehner right now at the moment, because your job's not easy, as I said. Now, here's my take on the House bill, okay? If you run a corporation, you really like this House version. But if you live in a high-tax state, if you're self-employed, if you make a lot of money, you really do not like this House version. Why am I wrong?
Well, I'd say, look, the analysis is really clear. What our analysis shows us that in every income group, the average taxpayer gets a tax cut. But the point we're trying to make with this, that on the individual side, the tax cuts are aimed toward the middle-income taxpayers. The president made it really clear to us. He said he did not want us to lower the tax rate on millionaires. He wanted us to lower the tax rates and provide the most tax relief for people in the middle-income taxpayers.
You can't say that every American gets a tax cut, then.
No, what the analysis shows us that the average taxpayer in all income levels gets a tax cut. I'm sure there's going to be some wealthy person out there who has a lawyer and accountant that has been able to utilize every different loophole and deduction that is out there, because, as you know, the tax loopholes that are in the code are disproportionately used by the very wealthy folks in this country. And when you remove those loopholes, in order to lower tax rates across the board, in order to provide simplicity and fairness, the people at the high end lose those loopholes. But we're able to actually lower tax rates across the board. And that top tax rate applies to a higher income level.
And for the high earners, you're right about that. But I'm seeing middle class taxpayers too. Once you take away the deductions, a lot of people are going to see their taxes go higher.
Here's our postcard. This is what it shows you. if you double the standard exemption, what we're doing for a family, instead of your first $12,000 being tax-free, your first $24,000 being tax-free, you know what that means, Bill? That means 90% of all taxpayers in this country don't have to itemize their deductions. Only 70% don't right now. 30% itemize their deductions. 9 out of 10 won't have to itemize their deductions because we'll say, look, just take a standard deduction. Therefore, you don't have to worry about itemizing your deduction. Take a standard deduction, so your first $24,000 is tax-free. Oh, and then you're going to enjoy lower tax rates all the way up the income bracket until you become a millionaire. Oh, and then we're saying if you have kids, $1,600 per child tax credit. So there's a lot. Look, the problem, Bill, is half the country's living paycheck to paycheck right now. A whole bunch of other folks are living about one paycheck away from living paycheck to paycheck. The average household will get a $1,200 tax break, $1,182 tax break. That's a lot of money for people who are on the edge, on the verge, really worried about just next month. And so that's really what the design is here. And I would say that the high-income people in this country, who are the successful people who own businesses, which we want to see more success, we want to see businesses grow. Yes, there's a big tax rate drop on businesses because we want our businesses to be successful, we want our businesses to grow, but most importantly, we want our businesses to be on a level playing field with the rest of the world. Because what America is doing right now is we are taxing American businesses at much, much higher tax rates than foreign countries are taxing their businesses. And it's pushing jobs overseas. It's pushing companies overseas. And we want to level that playing field so we keep jobs here.
Well, here's an idea. Why not get around this entire debate by cutting spending? Where has that issue gone? I mean,
the House
it disappeared when Barack Obama left the White House.
Yeah, look, we're a little frustrated on that, too, as well, because as you know, Bill, we've passed these bills here in the House. The Diane Black budget cut more than $7 trillion. It showed you how to cut $7 trillion of spending out of the budget. The House passed its repeal and replace of the Obamacare bill, which was huge fiscal conservatism, great entitlement reform, spending relief. The House has done this. The challenge we have with the 380-some bills we've passed out of the House, 308 of those bills are still in the Senate. They have other things they have to deal with. They have a filibuster. They have a different system. It's frustrating for us. But the House has been delivering on these things. But the point I'm trying to say is there's two things we got to do. We got to cut spending and grow the economy. This tax reform plan is our plan to grow the economy. The Tax Foundation says it could create as much as 1 million new jobs. It's going to give us faster economic growth, higher wages, more take-home pay. So that's really important. So you're right. We do have to cut spending, but we also have to grow the economy. There's nothing more that you can do to grow the economy than tax reform and tax cuts.
Did the White House give you guidelines for this tax bill?
We work with them.
Working within parameters that satisfy the White House as opposed to what would satisfy you? Because I know you went to Congress as an acolyte of Jack Kemp.
That's right.
And I'm thinking you've lived your entire political life waiting for the opportunity for substantial tax reform, going back to 1986 and Ronald Reagan. And if that's the case, you, as Speaker, why not go for broke? Make it as conservative as possible and see how much you get through.
2 points, Bill. Number one, yes, we worked on this with the president. After all, he's the person who has to sign the bill when it gets to his desk. So yes, this bill was worked out in conjunction with the Senate and the president, and we have a coalition. Not everybody gets their way, but what I'm very pleased with this product. Look, this is far more bold tax reform than the '86 tax reform that Ronald Reagan did. These tax cuts are deeper and bigger than what Ronald Reagan did on just an actual basis. I mean, it's a $1.5 trillion tax cut. But more importantly, what this is, it's the kind of reform we haven't seen in generations in this country. I would argue that this tax reform is far more profound, far more pro-growth than the '86 tax reform. We're going from a worldwide to a territorial system. We're dropping the tax rate on our businesses by about 40% so that they can compete in this global economy. That's going to give us fast economic growth. This is Reagan-like tax reform, no two ways about it.
I've got about a minute left. Your margin for error is slim. I think you know that already. Passed a budget by only 2 votes with a majority in the House. Darrell Issa already said he's against it out of California. Ted Cruz is casting doubt on the Senate side because he wants a tax cut for all Americans. So we'll see where this ends up later today. Now, Nancy Pelosi just yesterday said she sees the window of opportunity to win back the majority in the House based on the results in Virginia. What do you think about that?
We keep our promises. We do what we said we would do. We're going to be just fine. We're in the middle of keeping one of the most important and prominent promises we have made, which is the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which is cutting taxes, reforming the tax system to grow the economy, give people bigger paychecks, give people in the middle the relief that they need and they deserve. We keep this promise, we get this done, I think we're going to be just fine.
Thank you for your time. Come on back, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate the candor.
Go Badgers.
Well, we'll see what you get up there in Wisconsin. Thank you. Speaker Paul Ryan there on the Hill. Thank you.
Go straight back to Washington now, where Congressman Steve Scalise is honoring Capitol Police for saving his life. It's a Medal of Honor ceremony honoring 5 officers who responded to that Alexandria baseball shooting. Watch.
That day, nobody saw it coming. You were practicing on a baseball field. And when the shots went out, it wasn't long before they jumped in and just did some things that nobody can describe. When you look at the firepower that was coming at them, heavily outgunned, and yet they went towards the danger. Nicole and Alexander and Kevin, they came running towards the danger too. And these 5 brave men and women prevented what would have been a mass execution. A lot of members of Congress that are here today wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here today without the heroism and their bravery. I do want to mention, I know Tiffany, Crystal's wife, is here. Tiffany, thank you. I know you're providing great care to Crystal, and it's so good to see Crystal without her boot on now, so she's getting closer. She keeps challenging me. She actually inspired me to get crutches, and then she went down to 1 crutch, and now she's down to no crutches and no boot. I am so glad to see you getting so much better, and one day you're going to be back to work. And David, Tiger Blood. We've always had this unique bond, and he knows what that means, and it embodies everything that they represent, to go towards the danger. I do want to mention that David's mom came here from Brazil. Thank you so much for coming.
You've been listening to Congressman Steve Scalise honoring Capitol Police that saved his life and many others on that baseball field, a congressional baseball practice that day. Congressman Steve Scalise taking a moment to honor those who stepped in and ran in the face of danger that day.
You know what I've learned about experts in politics? They're almost always wrong, and most of them have never run for an office in their life. Look, I don't read too much in it. I mean, I think all politics is local. I believe that. Virginia is every day becoming more and more of a blue state.
Well, that's Republican Senator John Kennedy saying that whatever the political experts are speculating about the 2018 midterms, well, they're probably wrong, in his words. Of course, his comments coming after 2 big wins in those election races from Tuesday. Democrats seeing a window of opportunity for the future. We're joined now by Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov and Alex Conant, former communications director for Senator Marco Rubio, who we had on last hour, and we were happy to have him. So what do you make of this? So Senator Kennedy saying, let's calm down here. This isn't like some huge indication of what's coming in 2018.
Yeah, a lot of Republicans were panicking yesterday. I think it's a little early to panic. The midterms are for another year, and we still have a lot of time to set things right. Passing tax reform, as Speaker Ryan was just saying, is a critical first step, especially a tax reform that cuts taxes for the middle class and is popular with the American people. That will do a lot. The second problem, frankly, a lot of Democrats were fired up because of Trump, and they're fired up because of his tweets. If he stopped tweeting, I think that would help as well.
All right. Well, Jessica.
Well, we know that's not going to happen.
Right.
So
a guy can hope, right?
Totally.
Jessica, what do you think? Do Democrats pick up a bunch of momentum here? Was this the big moment?
It wasn't as watershed as a lot of Democrats would like it out to be, or my fundraising emails look. I mean, my inbox is just packed with, don't you want to give another 5? And yeah, I do want to give another 5 because I'm excited that we flipped the House in Virginia. Obviously, I mean, Murphy was going to win. Northam, that margin is surprising. And we do know that Gillespie actually outperformed Trump. So people, saying, oh, he was a bad candidate. He wasn't a bad candidate. He is a great candidate. I mean, I wouldn't have been voting for him, but as far as Republicans go, pretty palatable. I think that the real challenge for Republicans going forward is how are they going to deal with Trump in places where Trump is not that popular.
So let me tell you, I mean, obviously one of the big debates is how Trump affected the outcome of this. In one of these voter analysis, we have a full screen here showing how Virginia, among voters who said Trump was important in their decision, the Democrat Northam won big. Northam 69% that said Donald Trump was important to their vote. Gillespie 30%. Alex?
Well, that's exactly the point. I think a lot of Democrats were trying to send a signal to Washington by voting in their votes yesterday. It wasn't just the gubernatorial race. It was also all those down ballot races, the state legislature. Democrats are on the verge of taking over the state's House in Virginia for the first time in as long as I can remember. And that is a huge problem nationwide, and it's a long-term problem because of redistricting.
But it's also, it's more than Trump, because if you look at the race, Danica Roem's race, the first transgender woman to be elected, she ran against a guy who would call himself the chief homophobe. And you look at an election like what's going to happen in Alabama with Roy Moore, who has a lot of positions that I think we all would disagree with and has said some things about the gay community that no one should ever say. And you look at the fact that there are former Jeff Sessions staffers who are going to work for Doug Jones, for a real blue Democrat, because of the candidate that's being put up on the right. I don't know how many Trumps can win in this climate who don't have his celebrity power.
But before this win, the conversation was Democrats, they don't have a deep bench and they don't have a message.
Right.
What is the plan for 2018?
I would still like
the
to
issue
know
with your party?
what that is. No, I mean, there are some stars who have been elected here. Fairfax, the new lieutenant governor, is 38 years old, is going to be a complete star. There are a lot of exciting people coming up, but we haven't had our Barack Obama 2004 DNC convention moment. We don't know who the last word is.
They are nothing but an anti-Trump party right now. We need to focus more on our agenda, more on how the economy is doing well, and less on Trump's.
We're the party of healthcare now. If you look at those exit
Alex
polls.
last word.
I'm sorry. Say something else.
That's good. We'll be teasing. Always good to have both of you. Nice to speak with you, Bill.
Well done there. John Scott's coming up next. He'll get the last word now. What's up, John?
I'll do my best, Bill. Thank you. As Senate Republicans are set to unveil their sweeping changes to the House tax bill, President Trump is accused of muddying the issue by giving a sales pitch to Senate Democrats. And a former president seems to include Mr. Trump as a member of the, quote, Dictators Club. Who it was and why he was pulling no punches on a late-night talk show. Howie Kurtz joins us, happening now, 10 minutes away.
Showing the takedown of a carjacking suspect. Officers surrounding a stolen vehicle with a 27-year-old man inside. That's when police shot him with a rubber bullet. But we want to warn you, this video is disturbing. Suspect was hit in the chest after he refused officers' orders to lie down. He was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment.
Don't see that every day, huh? Wow. Still no verdict now. Senator Menendez bribery trial. The jury back deliberating now. The New Jersey Democrat confident that he will walk. Rick Leventhal back outside the courthouse in Newark, New Jersey. Rick, what's happening?
Well, Bill, I asked the senator this morning if he was ready for Judgment Day, and he said, I am past ready for Judgment Day, but there's a lot for the jury to consider here. More than 9 weeks of trial, dozens of witnesses, hundreds of pieces of evidence, and 2 defendants, one of them a sitting U.S. senator, facing a dozen counts of corruption, including bribery, fraud, and making false statements on congressional disclosure forms. The 2-term New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez claiming innocence in this case that also involves his good friend, the wealthy Florida eye doctor Solomon Melgen, who the government says gave Menendez lavish vacations, rides on his private jets, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in political contributions in exchange for favors and intervention in contract disputes. Melgen has already been convicted of Medicare fraud, but faces more time here, and the senator says he's patiently waiting for the verdict.
The jury has family, children, jobs. I get, after 9 weeks, 60 witnesses, hundreds of pages, that they're doing their job. And they also have challenges at home. So, you know, I'm happy to wait for the jury to come to a just verdict.
He faces up to 5 to 20 years on each of the 12 counts against him, Bill.
We await. Thank you, Rick Leventhal, back outside the courthouse today. Sandra.
President Trump full of praise in China, what he's saying in public, and how it compares to his message behind closed doors. A live report ahead from Beijing.
When you have type 2 diabetes,